Chapter 5. I had to get him out, and I had to go in there with him to do it. Holly knew what I had done. I doubted he would talk to me at all if he had any choice. I had decided not to give him one. I stood up, ignoring my wobbly gait, and jumped off the roof onto the soft ground below. I picked myself up about halfway, then had to sit down again. Vertigo. I had to blink my eyes several times before they would focus right. Damn, I didn't have time for a concussion. I stood up slowly the second time and stayed up. I scanned the dark outlines of the trees before me. I could almost feel the commandos wandering through them. Too much weaponry and not enough targets. It would have to be the bridge route. Borglin was sure to have them guarded, but anything was better than crowded woods. I started off at an easy trot down the outer perimeter of the maze toward the river. The jumbled stacks of hovels looming over me were still silent and still. The city looked empty, or beaten, or both. Eerie. Where were the Crusaders? I had to slow down to a walk for a while to give my head a fighting chance. Fat lot of good to Holly if I conked again. Damn Holly, I thought suddenly. What the hell was he doing? He had a plan, of course. A plan. There had to be one. Something suitable for a spindly, over-romantic would-be hero to pull out at the last second, no doubt. Something the evil villain would never suspect. Or probably, in the case of Borglin, notice. I had to get in there. I tried trotting again. It worked after a fashion. Faster, anyway. So, I had to get in there and make Holly see me. Make him tell me the grand scheme. Make him see it wouldn't work. Plus, make him leave with me. All in half an hour. I tripped on something and slid down on my butt. It hurt like hell. I reached back around and pulled out the culprit. I had landed on the convid. I was rearing back to throw it against the side of a shack when it spoke to me in Lia's voice.
"Oh, please, darling,"
she was saying.
"It can't do anybody any good if you get killed."
She sounded awful. Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Despair and worry and fear, and exhaustion from them all, trembled within it. Then the screen flickered to life with her face, and I saw it was even worse than it sounded. I hit a key. "Lia? This is Jack." She perked up.
"Jack? Jack, where are you?"
"Outside the city." Her eyes got wide.
"The city? But... Oh, Jack, you've got to help Holly. He's in the dome all alone, and he won't come out, and they're going to blow it up in just a few minutes, and he won't answer me."
"I'm going there now. Is he really in there alone?"
"Yes,"
she sobbed.
"He's locked himself in, and... Jack, the defense screens are down. He'll be killed."
I waited for her sobs to pass. What happened? How did all this happen? She gathered herself together with effort, brushing back the tears in her hair and sitting up straight. Then she told me. Most of it I knew, who Borglin was and the like, and what he wanted. Other parts I had assumed. The ultimatum, the landing of the troops, the guarantees of safety for cooperative types. No one had believed Borglin when he had first claimed to have arranged to sabotage the screens. The board showed green. Then had come the blast to match the hole Borglin had already shown me. Shortly afterward, Holly had ordered everyone out. It wasn't until all were gathered in the valley and at the crew quarters that Lia had noticed he was missing.
"I called him at the dome, and he said he wasn't coming and that he wouldn't let anyone else in, and he hasn't spoken to me since. Jack, you've got to do something."
"I will. But why, Lia? Why did he stay? Did he tell you?" She frowned and shook her head.
Just that he couldn't give it to that man, to Borglin. Not after what happened to the city folk. I sighed. What happened? Oh, I didn't tell you that. I was so worried about... Well, they had guns, Jack. I don't know where they got them, and they attacked Borglin's people. And got killed? No! Well, yes, some of them. I guess a lot of them. God, Jack, those monsters have everything. I know. What about the city? Oh, well, they all ran back there to hide, but Borglin called them and told them to bring him all their guns. Did they? Some did, I think, but most of them didn't. Then Borglin said he was going to teach them a lesson, and he started bombing them, or whatever he did to us. Mortars. Yes, mortars. He shot them all over the city, said he was teaching them a lesson. I frowned, looking up at the looming slums. Still ugly, but standing. Anyway, she went on. Then they all came out with the guns and they took them. Borglin's people did. But when they got back to the city, he started the mortars again. After they'd given in? She nodded. He said the lesson wasn't over. I looked again at the stacks. It didn't make sense. Then I reached the end of the perimeter and made the turn inward toward the main square. God damn. What, Jack? I explained to her that I had just found the lesson. There was no main square. The land was there, even some of the puddle. But what made it a square, the buildings which surrounded and enclosed it, were gone. Gone. So was most of the far side of the maze. A square kilometer at least. The only section still intact was the perimeter I had been following. And nothing at all, was moving. No one. Did he kill everybody? I muttered. Jack? Called Laya. I ignored her, still staring. Then I laughed. Jack? She called again. Are you laughing? No, I lied, though I soon stopped. It wasn't funny, but I had slept through it. It was too terrifying to be anything but funny. Damn, I thought next. I must have been in a coma. I felt the back of my head. The lump felt bigger to my trembling fingers. Of course, I cried, seeing what must have happened. Holly decided to defend the dome after this. She nodded glumly. That's right. Jack, can you... Is there anything you can do? I have a way to get in, I assured her. If Holly hadn't closed it, I amended to myself. You've got to get in and stop him. You've got to make him listen. I'll try. I puffed, tromping loudly across the small span and onto the river. You've got to. He won't listen to me or anyone else from the project. Lewis was the only one he'd talked to, and that was hours ago. I snorted. Lewis! Great. Oh no, Lewis is very concerned. I had to stop. I leaned over and braced my hands on my legs. I'm sure, I managed to reply. He is, Jack. You don't know. He's very worried. He said he'd rather give the planet away than have Holly killed. Then why doesn't he? He tried. Borglin wants the dome. But Lewis did say he could have it. He didn't care. I smiled. Now that I could buy. I looked at the sky. Dawn was coming fast. How many minutes left? I forced myself to stumble ahead, clutching my stomach tightly with a forearm to keep it where it should be. I stopped when I heard the river. I lifted the convid and whispered into it. I'm turning you off, Laya. What's the matter? She all but shrieked. I slammed the volume control.
I'm at the river. Guards will hear you. I'll talk to you again when I get across. She probably said okay. I keyed off and dropped the unit to the ground. Then I crept slowly forward until I could just make out the outlines of the bridge. I didn't bother to locate the guards I knew must be there. Instead, I cut off at a diagonal to the riverbank. The water was still warm. It seemed to clear my head. Less than a minute later, I was sliding the hatch open. It was very dark inside, much darker than the false dawn outside. I felt my way along slowly, my arms stretched out in front like a sleepwalker, until I found a wall to follow. I had gone maybe 10 meters when lights, blaring and blinding, flashed into life overhead. I groaned, covered my eyes with my hands. "What do you want?" said a stern voice from close by. Holly's. I moved my hands and squinted enough to see the blazer pointing my way. "Holly?" I said as calmly as I could. "What do you want, Jack?" He repeated. "I want to know what you're doing in here." "Why?" "Why not?" He stared a while, determined to be firm and hard and angry. But he hated it, and had to fight himself to do it. He took a deep breath. "Get out!" he said harshly, waving the barrel back toward the hatch. "No." His eyes widened. "I'll shoot you." "Okay." A beat. Another. The gun slumped with his arms. Tears pooled in his eyes. "Jack, how could you?" My own eyes began to sting. "I don't know," I said at last. And I didn't. He looked at the floor. His chest shook. I thought I would die. Something. Not sorry. Not enough. Something. "Holly, one thing." He looked up at me as though he expected more bad news. I swallowed. "Holly, it was before. I couldn't have afterwards." He understood at once. "Before?" he echoed uncertainly. I nodded. He made a half smile. He waved me down the corridor. I followed behind him, wondering if from now on the rest of our lives would be divided the same way. Before and after Felix.